I've long said that RFK is the most dangerous of Donald Trump's cabinet nominees, and I think the news this week is confirming that. My name is Brittany Page, and this is the Page Perspective, and you might disagree. There is some strong competition here, and if you do disagree, I would love to hear who you think is the most dangerous and why in the comments below. There are some signs that even Republicans knew how dangerous RFK was and is. During his Senate confirmation hearing, the now Secretary for Health and Human Services was called to answer for his anti-vaccine activism, and not just by Democrats. Republican Senator Bill Cassidy, who is also a physician, made clear that he was struggling with RFK's anti-vaccine background. Those struggles and concerns about the damage that RFK could do to the health of Americans across the country, though, that couldn't compete with the fact that Bill Cassidy will be up for re-election in 2 years in Louisiana, where he knows he needs to prove fealty to Trump first and foremost, lest he incur the wrath of the billionaires now openly threatening to primary people who step out of line. So Bill Cassidy voted to advance Kennedy's nomination in the Senate Finance Committee, handing him over to the Senate for a confirmation vote where he was confirmed. The vote to advance his nomination was 14-13, meaning that if Cassidy had voted against Kennedy, we wouldn't be in this situation. But Cassidy defended his vote by giving a speech, letting us all know that even though he put us in this situation, he had a plan to ensure that RFK wouldn't ruin all of our lives.
To this end, Mr. Kennedy and the administration committed that he and I would have an unprecedentedly close collaborative working relationship if he is confirmed. We will meet or speak multiple times a month. This collaboration will allow us to work well together and therefore to be more effective. Mr. Kennedy has asked for my input into hiring decisions at HHS beyond Senate-confirmed positions, and this aspect of the collaboration will allow us to represent all sides of those folks who are contacting me over this past weekend. He has also committed that he had worked within current vaccine approval and safety monitoring systems and not establish parallel systems. If confirmed, he will maintain the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices recommendations without changes. CDC will not remove statements on their website pointing out that vaccines do not cause autism.
The plan, in a very Nathan Fielder tone, babysit the 71-year-old man with a lifelong record of anti-vaccine activism who has no regard for the scientific process and is solely concerned with coddling his many conspiracy theories in the hopes that he will not live up to his lifelong aspirations to decimate public health in this country. And how? How is that plan going, Bill? Given your decision to sacrifice, well, all of us, because you are afraid of MAGA and of losing your personal power, losing an election, how is the babysitting of RFK going? What's that? Not well? Let's look at this reporting from Stat News. Quote, Senator Bill Cassidy, the chairman of the Senate Health Committee, voted to confirm Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as the nation's health secretary last month on the condition that Kennedy, a longtime vaccine critic, keep him apprised of agency actions, especially those related to vaccines. On Thursday morning, Cassidy said the two had breakfast to discuss Kennedy's plans to lay off 10,000 Health and Human Services Department employees. And while the meeting took place 2 days after a report that the department had tapped vaccine critic David Geier to conduct a study looking for a link between immunizations and autism, the Louisiana senator said the issue did not come up. Oh, it did not come up. Interesting. Interesting that a man who blamed his brainworm for the self-reported cognitive struggles that diminished his earning potential in official divorce proceedings as a way to avoid paying alimony is not honest, trustworthy, or able to be controlled via babysitting after being handed the power he's long been yearning to have. But who is this David Geier that has been hand-selected to study the connection between vaccines and autism? Let's turn to reporting from the Washington Post, the first to report on this, I believe. Quote, the Department of Health and Human Services has hired David Geier to conduct the analysis, according to officials who spoke on the condition of anonymity for fear of retaliation. Geier and his father, Mark Geier, have published papers claiming vaccines increase the risk of autism, a theory that has been studied for decades and scientifically debunked. David Geier was disciplined by Maryland regulators more than a decade ago for practicing medicine without a license. He is listed as a data analyst in the HHS employee directory. He was charged with practicing medicine without a license in May 2011, just weeks after his father's license was suspended for allegedly putting autistic children at risk. So quackery is a family business here, and the familial history of charlatanism, is that a word? It should be. The charlatan familial history is wild. They've published papers on autism and vaccines that have been retracted, including one where they alleged that public health officials studying vaccines have conflicts of interest, all the while they failed to cite their own involvement with a mercury-free drugs coalition. You know, a conflict of interest. It's a mess, and it's clear why David Geier was selected. RFK wants someone who will do whatever it takes to prove his conspiracy theory. Decades of research that disproves his conspiracy is not enough. He wants someone unscrupulous, who will operate without regard for the scientific process, who wants to prove his pre-existing beliefs. And that's just not how science works. RFK wants this man to give him the answer that he wants to hear. That is how we get retractions due to fraud. In science, you ask a question, you register a hypothesis, and ideally create the conditions in your research design that prevent you from finding a particular outcome you prefer. Whether that is pre-registering your study and making everything known in advance, your experimental design, your plans for data analysis. I mean, it also helps if you're not a zealot. These people are zealots, and they're straight up not qualified to be doing this work. And we're right now seeing the consequences of anti-vaccine activism play out in this country. Measles was declared eliminated in this country in 2000 because of vaccines. Now, an outbreak that is only growing. And because RFK is now running the show, telling people to use vitamin A to combat the measles, children are now being treated for toxic levels of vitamin A. This is what happens when you allow someone like this to come to power, while claiming all will be well because you're going to babysit them. And it's not just this, you guys. RFK has called a life-saving vaccine for HPV the most dangerous vaccine ever invented, despite the evidence of its wild success in preventing cervical cancer. And RFK has vested interest in this, given he had to, after much pressure, announce that he would stop collecting referral fees from an HPV vaccine lawsuit if he got the role he now has. He earned $850,000 last year from referring clients to the lawsuit. Remember that whole conflict of interest thing that we talked about earlier? RFK was also probed about his openness to restricting the abortion pill, a goal in Project 2025 you've heard me talk a lot about on this channel. And according to Republican senators who did this probing during the confirmation process, RFK is open to restricting it. Given RFK is responsible for overseeing the CDC, NIH, FDA, the Senate just confirmed an anti-abortion ally to lead the FDA, who could be instrumental in carrying out the anti-abortion movement's goals to restrict access to the abortion pill. I haven't even talked about the cuts yet. I mean, RFK, through the HHS, has canceled more than $12 billion in federal grants to states. This money was being used to track infectious disease or fund mental health services and addiction treatment services. They are slashing COVID funding, abandoning mRNA research. I mean, pick a topic that you care about. It's going to be impacted by the cuts demanded by HHS and RFK. Alzheimer's disease, HIV prevention, violence prevention, health disparities in pregnancy. They are ordering the closure of Head Start programs. I mean, Jesus Christ, what are we doing here? Make no mistake, because RFK was confirmed to be the Secretary of Health and Human Services, people will die. We don't know how many, but there are going to be hundreds, thousands, many, many more deaths. This is not hyperbole. And we can point fingers at who to blame. Every single person who voted to confirm RFK, Bill Cassidy for choosing himself and his power over what he knew was right, Donald Trump for appointing RFK, the brainworm for failing to really go the distance with tripping up that cognition. I mean, the brainworm only went for the alimony-related cognition and not running the HHS cognition. Okay, we don't have time for pointing fingers right now because this is the reality that we're living in, and people are being harmed daily by this administration. So it's time to get loud, amplify the voices who understand science, who refuse to peddle misinformation, who are actively fighting against this administration. And if you have recommendations for people who fit that description, leave your recommendations in the comments below. Most importantly, though, don't give in to hopelessness, because that is exactly what they want from us. Tell me what you're thinking, whether you agree or disagree. You can call, leave me a fewer than 3-minute voicemail at 202-656-1509, or send an email to idoughtit@dollemore.com. You can support my work here by clicking the join button below to become a channel member for as little as $1.99 a month, or by going to patreon.com/idoubtitpodcast, or simply by sharing this video or my channel with a friend. You can also click the subscribe button for free. Make sure you hit the like button and leave a comment. Truly, anything helps that algorithm. I appreciate you all. Take care, and I will see you next time.